is an introduction of E. Barrett Prettyman, Jr. Barrett Prettyman was Robert Jackson's final law clerk. Barrett Prettyman was also someone who Jackson was aware of and at least casually acquainted with from Barrett's own youth, because Barrett Prettyman's father was a very accomplished, successful public servant, lawyer, and then federal judge in Washington, D.C. So often you'll see, literally on your nightly news, his name, actually his father's name, as the backdrop of a television story taken outside the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., which is the E. Barrett Prettyman Sr. Courthouse, in honor of his father's long tenure on the D.C. Circuit. Barrett Prettyman, Jr., after his youth in Washington, his education, his military service, was a law student at the University of Virginia, as you heard this morning, invited Jackson down as a speaker and reestablished that connection, and then applied and was hired as that last law clerk, and worked solo for Jackson for what sadly turned out to be Jackson's last 14, 15 months on the court. Barrett Prettyman, like each of his predecessors, connected with Jackson in a deeply personal way, and a spark of personality from him connecting with Jackson is part of what I take away from my study of that relationship. One episode that Barrett remembers an aspect of is captured in a document that I think shows part of what Jackson knew and valued and enjoyed so much in him. The podiatrists, or some organization of podiatrists, at some point sent Jackson a letter informing him that he'd been selected to be their annual honoree, which was somewhat ridiculous. Jackson was no podiatrist, and I think his feet were fine. But it was a publicity-seeking attempt by the podiatrist. And Barrett chuckled over this invitation, this honor. What he doesn't know, but I found in my digging, is that during Jackson's convalescence in the spring of 1954 after a heart attack, one of the things that delighted Jackson as he was recuperating was a little chit, a little note that Barrett sent to Jackson in the hospital, which pertained to this honor, and asked Jackson if he'd be able to make the date on which the award would be given, and informed him that the dress code, of course, was black tie and bare feet. Barrett Prettyman today is one of the deans of the American legal profession of the bar in Washington, D.C., which he was the first president of. He's senior counsel in Eminence Grease, I don't know if that's on the business card, at Hogan & Hartson, a firm founded by Robert Jackson's great adversary in his first national case, Frank Hogan, the prosecution of Andrew Mellon, defended by Hogan and defeated by Jackson. Barrett Prettyman, in his career, has accomplished much that echoes the legal excellence of Robert Jackson. Barrett Prettyman is one of the inside stars of the Supreme Court bar. He's argued more than a dozen cases himself before the court. Is a brilliant oral advocate, as Jackson was. And what Barrett Prettyman brings to us this evening is a piece of the last phase of Jackson. I'll say another word about that in a moment, but at this point I'll simply pause and thank you, Barrett Prettyman, for being here with us this evening. To his clerkship with Justice Jackson in the summer of 1953, when the court had very shortly before decided to put over for re-argument the momentous case, Brown versus Board of Education. It was first argued to the Supreme Court in December of 1952. The justices then met to discuss it in their private conference, and the result of that conference, announced publicly in the spring of 1953, was a decision to have the case re-argued, and a request to the attorneys that specific questions be addressed in the re-argument. That case resulted in the Brown decision of May 1954, which we will celebrate a 50th anniversary of this coming May 17th. That case obviously gripped the nation because of the fundamental issue that it embodied, the legality under our Constitution of racial segregation in the setting of elementary and secondary education. Brown was, of course, one of 5 companion cases, so I'm summarizing a lot of complexity in the Brown label. Our topic this evening, on which Barrett Prettyman will speak to us, is Jackson Unpublished, a story of Justice Jackson's participation in the deciding, the complex behind-the-scene deciding of that very important American constitutional law landmark. E. Barrett Prettyman, Jr., Jackson, unpublished.
Thank you, John and Greg and my fellow clerks and all the rest of you who've been so hospitable the last couple of days to us and have made this such a fine and fun series of events. We really, really appreciate it.